They say the devil doesn't wait in hell. He waits on the road, a stretch of asphalt where headlights flicker and some passengers never leave. Asterisk. This is the story of Michael Grant, a trucker who made one mistake. He stopped to help a woman stranded on Route 66. But that road wasn't meant for the living anymore. Asterisk. What began as an act of kindness became a descent into something far darker, a haunting that would turn one man's guilt into eternal punishment. Tonight, we followed the devil's passenger. The desert always looked different after midnight. The stars hung low, too close, and the road seemed to stretch endlessly into nothing. Michael Grant had been driving for 13 hours straight, his rig humming like a tired animal against the asphalt. His eyelids felt heavy, but he told himself just one more hour, just one more stretch of road, and he'd reach Reno by dawn. The CB radio buzzed softly with static. Occasionally, a faint voice broke through, truckers talking about weather, traffic, ghosts of the highway. He didn't listen anymore. He'd heard every story, every myth about this desert, dead towns, vanished travelers, voices that called your name through the static. All nonsense, he thought, until tonight. The temperature began to drop. The heater groaned, blowing only cold air now. Michael rubbed his arms, glancing at the dashboard clock. 12:47 a.m. The fog rolled in without warning, a thick grey curtain that swallowed the road ahead. The high beams reflected off it uselessly, making the world look like smoke. He leaned forward, squinting, the steering wheel cold under his palms. The world outside the windshield was empty. No lights, no signs, no movement. Just the rhythmic pulse of the wipers and the hum of tires over wet asphalt. Then, through the fog, a shape appeared. At first, he thought it was a deer, but as he slowed, the shape became clearer. A woman, standing on the shoulder of the highway, barefoot, drenched, her white dress clinging to her body. Her long black hair hung over her face. Michael's stomach tightened. What the hell? He muttered. He hadn't seen another car for miles. No towns, no exits. Who would be out here, alone, in this cold? He hesitated. Every instinct screamed to keep driving, but as he passed her, she turned her head, and for a brief moment, he saw her face through the window. Pale, hollow, her lips moved soundlessly, but he could read the words, "Please, stop." He hit the brakes before he realized what he was doing. The truck screeched to a halt, fog swallowing everything in its wake. Michael stepped out, his boots crunching against gravel. The night was silent, the kind of silence that made his heartbeat sound too loud. The woman stood a few feet ahead, unmoving, her eyes fixed on him. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" He called out. No answer. Then, without a sound, she lifted her hand and pointed to the passenger side of his truck. Something deep inside him twisted. He turned, slowly, dread crawling up his spine. The passenger door was open. Michael hesitated at the edge of the fog, his breath turning white in the cold. The woman hadn't moved, her bare feet pressing into the wet gravel. Her eyes fixed on the ground as though she was listening for something beneath it. The air around her seemed heavier, like it carried the weight of another world. He rubbed the back of his neck. "You need a ride somewhere?" No answer. She just looked up, slowly, her face pale and colorless in the headlights. Rainwater traced thin lines down her cheeks like tears. Against his better judgment, Michael opened the passenger door. The hinges groaned as he motioned her in. "Come on, get in. You'll freeze out here." She climbed in without a word. Her movements were smooth, almost too smooth, like she was gliding, not stepping. The smell that followed her was sharp, metallic, and cold, like old iron mixed with something faintly sweet. Michael got back behind the wheel and shut the door. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the engine filled the silence. "Where you headed?" he asked, trying to sound calm. Her voice was barely audible. "Nowhere." He frowned. "Okay, nowhere it is." He chuckled nervously, hoping for some reaction, anything, but she didn't move, didn't blink. Her hands rested perfectly still on her lap, fingers pale and stiff like porcelain. He reached for the heater dial again, still blowing cold air. "You from around here?" She turned her head slowly toward him. The light from the dashboard caught her eyes. They looked dark, impossibly dark, like no light could touch them. "Do you believe in the devil?" she asked softly. Michael froze. "What?" She smiled faintly, the first sign of emotion since she entered. Her lips were cracked and gray. "He likes the road," she whispered. "Says it's the only place he can still find souls who are running." A chill ran down his spine. He forced a laugh. "Okay, sure. Maybe you just need to rest, huh? He turned his eyes back to the road. The fog was thicker now, curling around the truck like smoke. When he glanced in the rearview mirror, he noticed something strange. The seat behind her was empty. Her reflection wasn't there. Michael's hand tightened on the wheel. He blinked hard, glanced again. Nothing, just the empty seat, and the faint outline of his own reflection staring back. Then the radio crackled, a sharp burst of static that made him flinch. The voice that came through wasn't a broadcast. Keep driving. He glanced at the woman. She was smiling now, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. You shouldn't have stopped, she whispered. The lights along the highway flickered once, and the world beyond the windshield went completely black. The highway felt endless. Michael's headlights carved to narrow tunnels through the fog, and the road ahead seemed to move, bending, twisting like it was breathing. The woman hadn't spoken since that one question. She sat perfectly still, eyes forward, her fingers twitching once in a while like she was counting something invisible. The radio was dead now, but every few minutes it hissed like a breath drawn through static. Michael tried to ignore it. We should hit a gas station soon, he muttered, mostly to himself. Then maybe you can call someone. The woman didn't respond. He stole a glance at her. Her head was tilted slightly toward the window. Raindrops streaked the glass, but outside he could see only black. No signs, no light, no sky, just an ocean of dark that pressed against the windshield. Then, softly, almost too soft to hear, she started to hum. It was a lullaby, faint, slow, and old, the kind of tune you'd hear from a music box buried in a child's room. Michael's grip on the wheel tightened. His mouth felt dry. That song, what is that? She didn't stop humming. The pitch wavered, dissonant. The odometer rolled over another mile, then another, then another. But the next exit sign, the one that should have said mile 66, never came. The same stretch of cracked asphalt and fog repeated again and again. Michael blinked. No way. He glanced at the fuel gauge. The needle hadn't moved in half an hour. Something was wrong. The woman's humming grew louder, echoing unnaturally inside the cab, as though it was coming from every direction at once. He tried to speak, to shout over it, but his voice cracked. What the hell is happening? The woman stopped humming. For a long moment, there was silence. Then she turned her head toward him. You took the wrong turn, she said quietly. You should have stayed on the main road. Michael swallowed hard. What road is this? She smiled faintly, her teeth too white against her pale skin. The one that never ends. A chill rippled through him. He pressed harder on the gas, but the truck didn't respond. The needle stayed frozen. Outside, the fog thickened into something heavier, darker like smoke from a fire that never stopped burning. Then the voice came from the CB radio again, deep, crackling, layered with static. Keep driving. Michael froze. The woman hadn't moved her lips. The voice wasn't hers. He's waiting, the radio said. He slammed the brakes. The truck screamed to a stop, tires screeching against the wet asphalt. When he turned to her, she was gone. Only the passenger door swung slowly open, letting in a blast of freezing air. And through the fog, at the edge of the light, he saw her again, standing by the road, barefoot, smiling. Almost there, she whispered. Then she vanished. The fog began to thin, and for the first time in hours, Michael saw lights ahead, faint, trembling neon that read open 24 hours. Jesse's diner. Relief washed through him like caffeine after a nightmare. He guided the truck into the cracked parking lot and cut the engine. The silence hit him like a blow. Inside, the diner looked frozen in time. Chrome counters, red vinyl booths, a jukebox that hadn't played in decades. The place smelled of old coffee and grease. A lone waitress, mid-60s, grey hair tied up tight, looked up from wiping the counter. Rough night? She asked. Her voice had the kind of calm that came from seeing too much. You could say that, Michael muttered. He took a seat by the window. Outside, the fog pressed against the glass like a living thing. She poured him a cup of coffee. You're lucky to make it this far. Most folks don't stop after dark. Yeah, he said, rubbing his hands together. Picked up a hitchhiker back there. A woman, white dress, long hair, looked lost. The waitress froze. The pot of coffee trembled slightly in her hand. She set it down slowly. Where'd you see her? Out past mile marker 66. Her face went pale. You sure about that? Michael nodded. Why? The woman exhaled sharply. Then she turned and pointed toward a dusty bulletin board near the counter. Pinned there was an old newspaper clipping, yellowed and curled at the edges. He stood up and leaned closer. The headline read, Woman found dead after accident on route 661989. Below it was a photograph, blurry, black and white, of a wrecked pickup and a young woman lying beside it, her hair spread across the dirt. Michael felt the air leave his lungs. No way. The waitress's voice lowered to a whisper. Folks say she still walks that road, waiting for someone to stop. But those who do, never make it home. He forced a laugh, though it came out shaky. You don't actually believe that, do you? She didn't answer. Instead, she looked past him, toward the window. Her eyes widened. Michael turned. Outside, through the glass, stood the woman, drenched barefoot, her face pressed against the window pane. Her hand left a streak of water as she slid it slowly down. The lights inside flickered once, then went out. The hum of the jukebox died, and from the darkness, a voice, soft, familiar, and wrong, whispered right behind him. You left me on the road. Michael stumbled out of the diner into the cold night air, his heart pounding. The fog had returned thicker now, swallowing the neon sign until only the faint word "open" pulsed like a dying heartbeat. He rubbed his eyes. The woman at the window was gone. The glass was dry. No trace of her handprint remained. He told himself it was exhaustion, a trick of the light. He'd been on the road too long. He climbed back into his truck, slamming the door behind him. The key turned, the engine groaned, and the dashboard flickered to life. For a moment, everything felt normal, until the seatbelt light on the passenger side blinked on. He froze. The seat beside him was empty. No one there, but the light stayed red, pulsing slowly in time with his heartbeat. He reached over and tugged the belt. It resisted, as if something invisible was sitting there. A faint click. The belt fastened itself. Michael's throat went dry. The smell returned, sharp, metallic, like burnt wires and sulfur. He rolled down the window, desperate for air. But the night outside smelled the same. The radio came alive again, static, deep and distant. A man's voice, this time, rough, like gravel grinding in a throat. You shouldn't have stopped. Michael looked around. Who's there? The voice chuckled, low and hollow. You picked her up. You take her home. Michael slammed his hand on the radio knob, cutting it off. But the voice didn't stop. It was coming from everywhere. From the vents, the dashboard, the vibration of the steering wheel. The headlights flickered. For a moment, the windshield reflected the interior, and in that reflection, the passenger seat wasn't empty. She was there, sitting perfectly still, head tilted toward him, eyes black and bottomless. Water dripped from her hair onto the floor mat. Michael turned his head, but when he looked directly at the seat, it was empty again. Only the faint imprint of a hand pressed into the fogged window. He grabbed the gear shift and slammed it into drive. The truck lurched forward, tires screeching against the wet asphalt. The diner's neon sign disappeared behind him, swallowed by fog. The road stretched ahead, endless and dark. But no matter how far he drove, the radio hissed softly with static, like something breathing inside the wires. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, eyes darting to the rearview mirror, and his blood ran cold. The woman sat in the back seat. Now, you're going the wrong way, she whispered. The radio screamed, not with sound, but with something deeper, like the world itself tearing. The headlights flared white, blinding, and for a moment, he saw her reflection in the mirror smiling, wide and inhuman. Then everything went dark again. The miles rolled by, but the highway no longer looked the same. The yellow lines had faded into ash, and the asphalt shimmered faintly as if it had been scorched long ago. The fog thinned just enough to reveal twisted silhouettes of dead trees lining the road, black, leafless, reaching toward the sky like hands frozen in agony. Michael's grip on the wheel was white-knuckled. Every nerve in his body screamed to turn back, but something else, something deeper, kept his foot on the gas. The woman's voice echoed in his mind like an afterimage of sound. Keep driving. The air inside the cab grew heavier. He could smell smoke now, faint, but real. It wasn't coming from the engine. It was older, thicker, like the scent of a campfire, long extinguished, but never forgotten. The CB radio flickered to life again. Static hissed, then a voice, low, male, distorted. You're almost home, Michael. His name. He froze. He hadn't said his name aloud, not once since picking her up. Who the hell is this? He shouted. What do you want from me? The voice on the radio chuckled softly, a sound that felt like teeth grinding against metal. I just want a ride. Michael's pulse thundered in his ears. He stared ahead, and then he saw it. The road split. On the left, the highway continued straight, fading into fog. On the right, a narrow dirt path curved into the darkness. Above it, a battered sign hung crooked, half-melted and unreadable. But beneath the grime, he could still make out a single word scorched into the wood. Crossroads. The woman's whisper came from the passenger seat again. Though she wasn't there. Turn right. He gritted his teeth. No. Turn right. Her voice deepened, layered, as if two people or two things spoke together. He's waiting. The steering wheel trembled in his hands. The engine roared without him pressing the pedal. The truck jerked violently, the tires screeching as it turned down the dirt road on its own. Michael fought the wheel, screaming, "Stop!" The fog vanished. In its place came black smoke, rolling across the ground like liquid shadow. The trees were gone now, replaced by charred telephone poles that buzzed faintly with dying electricity. At the center of the crossroads stood a single streetlight, bent, flickering, illuminating a scorched patch of earth shaped like a circle. In the middle of that circle stood the woman. Her white dress was now blackened, her hair floating as though underwater. The air around her shimmered with heat. Michael slammed the brakes. The truck stopped just at the edge of the light. She turned her head slowly toward him, her eyes glowing faint red. "We're here." The radio crackled again, and a new voice, deeper, older, and colder than anything human, spoke softly through the static. "Welcome back, driver." Michael couldn't breathe. His hands trembled on the wheel. His reflection in the windshield was smiling. The air thickened until every breath Michael took burned his lungs. The headlights struggled against the darkness, barely reaching 10 feet ahead. It was as if the night itself was swallowing the light hole. The road beneath him cracked and shimmered, shifting, stretching, looping endlessly. He drove for what felt like hours, but the mile marker ahead never changed. 66. Always 66. Every time he passed it, the same shape appeared by the roadside. A woman, standing still, her dress torn and blackened by ash. Sometimes she faced him, sometimes her back was turned, but she was always there. Michael gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white. "This isn't real," he muttered. "I'm dreaming. I fell asleep. That's all." The truck's clock read 12:47 a.m., the same time it had shown when he picked her up. He banged the dashboard. The numbers didn't move, neither did the fuel gauge. The radio hissed again, low and steady. Through the static, a faint voice whispered, "Almost home." Michael slammed the radio off, but the whisper kept going, not through the speakers, but from the seat beside him. He turned. The woman was there again. Her skin was paler than before, her lips dry and cracked like broken porcelain. Her hair hung in clumps, dripping black water onto the seat. He shouted, "What do you want from me?" She turned her head slowly, her neck creaking like a rope under strain. "You picked me up. I didn't know. You stopped," she whispered. "You invited me in." Michael's pulse hammered in his ears. He floored the gas pedal, desperate to outrun whatever this was. But the road just looped back into itself. The same cracked sign, the same trees, the same cursed mile. He tried to scream, but his voice vanished into the sound of the engine. The headlights flickered, and suddenly she was gone. Relief flooded him for half a second before he glanced in the rearview mirror. In the reflection, she wasn't gone. She was sitting behind him, closer than before, her head resting on the back of his seat. Her eyes were open, and they weren't human. They burned faintly red, like embers inside a skull. "He's waiting for you at the end," she said softly. "Keep driving." Michael's hands shook as he reached for the door handle. He wanted out, but when he looked outside, there was no world, just darkness. Stretching in every direction, the truck shuddered violently, the engine roaring as if alive. The dashboard lights flared red, then dimmed again. The odometer rolled 66.6 miles. The woman's smile widened. "We're getting closer." And when Michael blinked, just once, he realized the reflection in the mirror wasn't hers anymore. It was his. Smiling, the same smile. At some point, Michael stopped fighting the road. The steering wheel moved under his hands like it had a will of its own, following invisible lines drawn into the earth. His eyes were dry, burning from exhaustion. Every breath came heavy, each exhale a cloud in the cold. Then, without warning, the fog broke. The darkness thinned enough for him to see something ahead, a faint shimmer of moonlight, a patch of open ground off to the side of the highway. He slowed the truck, gravel crunching beneath the tires as he came to a stop. When he stepped out, the world was silent again. The engine ticked softly, cooling. The air smelled of dust, old flowers, and something faintly metallic. He saw it then. A wooden cross stood, crooked beside the road, weathered, forgotten. The ground around it was dry and cracked, but faint traces of burned grass formed a circle around its base. The name carved into the wood made his stomach twist. Anna Marie Carter, 1963 to 1989. His pulse pounded in his ears. That was the same name from the newspaper clipping. The woman in the photograph. He knelt beside the cross, fingers brushing the carved letters. The wood felt warm, almost alive. "Anna," he whispered, you didn't deserve this." A wind rose from nowhere, hot and heavy, rustling through the dead weeds. He turned, expecting the fog to roll back in, but it wasn't fog this time. It was smoke, black, slow-moving and thick as oil. The voice came from behind him, soft, close enough that he could feel the breath on his neck. "You stopped for me once before." Michael froze. "What? Do you remember the crash?" He turned around. She stood there, her eyes softer now, not black but grey, filled with sorrow. Her dress was torn, burned in places, her hands trembling. "You promised you'd come back for me," she said, "but you didn't." Michael's throat went dry. I don't know you. You were the one behind the wheel." The world tilted, his vision blurred. Flashes came unbidden, broken glass, screaming tires, the sound of rain hitting metal, a woman's hand reaching out from the passenger seat, his voice shouting her name. Anna. The road wasn't cursed. He was. He stumbled backward, gasping for air. The air around him pulsed with heat. The smoke thickened, forming vague shapes, faces, hands, all twisting and clawing at the air. "You left me there," she whispered, "and the devil found me first." The earth beneath the cross cracked open with a hiss, glowing faintly red. Michael fell to his knees, his reflection flickering in her eyes. "Now, you're the one who doesn't get to leave." She reached out, her hand ghostly pale. When her fingers touched his cheek, it burned. The wind screamed. The cross ignited in a silent burst of flame. The first spark came from the dashboard, a tiny flicker, almost invisible, crawling through the cracked plastic like a dying ember searching for air. Michael staggered backward, eyes wide as the glow spread across the steering wheel. The truck engine roared to life on its own, gears grinding, headlights flaring red instead of white. The air inside the cab shimmered with heat. Flames licked along the seams of the doors, breathing in rhythm with something unseen. Michael shouted, pounding on the door handle, but it wouldn't move. The metal burned hot beneath his palms. He stumbled away, gasping, the acrid scent of burning rubber and oil filling his lungs. Through the windshield, he saw her again, Anna, standing in the middle of the road, but now her body was fractured, like glass barely holding together, fire flickering within every crack. Her mouth moved slowly, whispering words that no sound could carry. He pressed his hands to his ears, screaming, "What do you want from me?" The answer came from everywhere, from the radio, from the fire, from the echo of his own heartbeat. "I just want you to remember." The world split in two. The flames erupted violently, bursting through the vents, coiling along the ceiling like serpents of light. Michael fell to his knees, choking, tears cutting trails through the soot on his face. And then he saw it reflected in the rearview mirror. It wasn't just the truck that was burning, it was him. His skin glowed faintly red, veins pulsing with light from beneath, like molten cracks forming under the surface. "You killed me," Anna's voice said, not angry, mournful. "You promised you'd come back." The steering wheel turned by itself, creaking slowly, until it faced him. From its center, a blackened hand reached out, dripping ash, clawing at the air. He scrambled back, screaming, "No, please. I didn't mean to. You left me in the fire." The smell of gasoline grew stronger. Flames danced along the floor mats, weaving strange shapes, symbols he couldn't recognize but somehow understood. This wasn't just a fire. This was the place he died. The roar grew deafening, a chorus of 1,000 whispers blending into one voice, the same voice that had followed him since the first mile. "Welcome home, driver." The truck's horn blared once, long and hollow, before everything exploded into blinding light. And in that final flash, as his body turned to shadow, Michael saw the truth. He had been driving this road long before tonight, and he would never stop by sunrise. Route 66 was quiet again. The sky over the Nevada desert glowed faintly gold, soft light breaking over miles of empty asphalt. A sheriff's cruiser rolled to a stop beside a stretch of scorched road, its tires crunching against the brittle gravel. The officer stepped out, squinting against the morning sun. He'd been called out for a report. Someone claimed to have seen fire out here during the night, but there was nothing left. No smoke, no wreck, just the faint smell of burned rubber and a patch of melted glass fused into the highway. He walked closer. The air still felt warm, though the desert wind was cool. When he bent down, he noticed tire marks, a long set of grooves leading into nothing, like the truck had kept driving straight into the horizon and vanished. A blackened object caught his eye in the dirt. He brushed away the ash and lifted it carefully. A half-melted CB radio microphone. Its cord was frayed, charred at the edges, but when he turned it over, a faint crackle came through the speaker. "Keep driving." The officer froze. He dropped the mic, heart racing, and backed away slowly toward his car. The desert was silent again, but as he drove off, his radio flickered with static. Somewhere beneath the noise, a woman's voice whispered faintly, "He's still out there." That night, a trucker named Earl Peterson swore he saw something on the highway just before dawn. A big rig, its headlights dim and red, coasting down the road without a sound. As it passed, the temperature dropped inside his cab, frost creeping up the windows even though it was August. He looked into the side mirror and saw two figures inside, a man behind the wheel and a woman beside him, her face half burnt, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. When he blinked, the truck was gone. The only thing left behind was a smell, sulfur and smoke, and a faint hum of static, echoing through his radio, whispering the same words over and over again. The road never ends. Some say the devil doesn't wait in the pits of hell. He waits on the road for anyone willing to stop. And if you ever drive that stretch of Route 66 after midnight, you might see a truck with no driver, gliding past with its lights off. If you do, whatever you do, don't look at the passenger seat.